In the endless depths of every mind, there is a well. Black water overboring, ripples upon ripples to nowhere. I reached for a bucket, but only drowned. Thus was I reborn, my essence revealed. Those who love their minds only drown in emptiness, yet those who love the beloved gently glide on the water's surface. No stone or metal is heavier than the ego. Godspeed to those who swim under its weight. This poem is perhaps the most descriptive and imaginative I've ever been when trying to describe the ego. If you've been watching a lot of the videos on this channel, you'll know that I like to talk a little bit about the ego, because it's the one and only obstacle preventing us from realizing our true essence and thus awakening with this newfound realization. The ego shows up in our life in a lot of different ways, but they all seem to stem from the mind. If we're insecure about something, chances are that it's the ego spinning nervous thoughts. If we're afraid of an outcome, chances are it's the ego creating fear. If we're jealous of someone, you can almost be sure that the ego is behind it. But what if we were able to travel deep into the depths of our mind to actually find our ego? It sounds a little bit science fiction at first, but imagine you cultivate such a level of self-awareness that you are able to see the ego's work from an objective point of view. The analogy that I always like to use is that you are no longer being carried away by the river, but are instead sitting on its bank, watching the water move by. Now, if you haven't experienced this stage yet, then you are bound to think that the ego is everything. In fact, you won't even know that there is an ego to begin with. Such is how sneaky and clever our ego is. We view this ego as manifested through our mind as a well we can drink from. But in reality, there is no water or nourishment here. This well only spits out black and poisoned water that engulfs everything and ultimately makes us drown. Symbolically, this of course means that because we are so attached to our ego and unconsciously believe it brings us so many benefits, we actually drown under its influence and as a result experience immense suffering. By the time we reach for a bucket to clear out all of the water that is rising around us, it's unfortunately too late. We already drown. We already suffer. But the story doesn't end here. Many of us will drown, but then we can also be reborn. In fact, haven't you ever seen someone who has been so lost and confused in life, only to magically find their way again and become a person you never thought they could become? I know I have, because that lost person was once me. I was so under the influence of my ego that I drowned spiritually in an endless well of suffering, until I experienced a life-changing accident that made me see my whole life in an entirely different way. I was reborn, and my true essence was revealed. And of course, there are countless people who go through a similar path in life as well. Once you wake up from the suffering that your ego creates, you enter a phase that many call healing. But it's really just you manifesting the real you. You were never really lost, broken, or sick to be healed. You just had a veil covering the real you. And with this new awareness, you start to look at life from a place of love, peace, compassion, and wisdom. You crave to grow spiritually and continue down the path of awakening. And most importantly, you realize that this life is not the end-all be-all. That we were not put on this earth to roam aimlessly or to endlessly accumulate possessions. We were put on this earth to reunite with God. All other purposes are a derivative of this divine purpose. Like a cub that is separated from its mother, we crave reunion, belonging, and completion. This state of being cannot be found in any other path except the path toward God. And so, for those of us who continue to let themselves be drowned by the ego, they will find themselves in an insane cycle of suffering. But for those of us who drown and then rise up, we will no longer drown again. Instead, we gently glide across the water, free at last from the ego's control. So I hope this poem helped you guys visualize just how powerful the ego can be, but even more so, just how powerful you can be. You can rise above anything as long as you stop yourself from continuing to drown in this well. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you'll join me here on my next video.